everyone. You're watching We Heart Therapy. I'm Dr. Anabelle Bugatti, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified emotionally focused therapist and supervisor. And I have a private practice in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm so excited to welcome back to our show, Dr. Laurie Watson. She is our sexpert. She is co-host of the podcast Foreplay Radio, which is found wherever podcasts are found. And it recently hit top 10 for iTunes and Apple, which is fabulous. And she's written books and she has a practice as well. And so we're super excited to welcome Dr. Laurie Watson back to our show. Thank you so much, Dr. Laurie.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
So today we are going to talk about women and sex.
Okay.
And this is a very special topic because I have had so many women come through my practice and just through my life, through acquaintances or friendships, where they struggle to have a satisfying sex life with their partner. And I find what they talk about is that they enjoyed sex when they first got together, or, you know, when they were sort of in the dating or honeymoon phase, but then there was a major drop off after they got married. And when you really talk to them, you find that a lot of women have used, not all, but a lot of women have used sex as a tool to secure a relationship. And I think this kind of comes from an old adage, you know, women will trade sex for love, where men will trade love for sex. And so, you know, sex wasn't really embarked upon for them as an activity that they necessarily enjoy doing, even though they would have fun. But it wasn't necessarily something they got out of it sexually. It was more, we've been given this message that that men mostly want sex and that's their main interest. And so if you can give them the best sex, then they won't want to go anywhere else and he'll be yours forever. And so they use sex as a way to secure a relationship, secure that partner. And then once the relationship feels secure, then, you know, it's like, well, I no longer have a function for sex because I never got much out of it anyway. And then the spouses or the partners kind of feel like they got a bait and switch. Like, we had all this sex when we were dating and then now we're married and now you never want to have sex. What gives? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Laurie, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Good. I think this is important. You know, there are actually 4 motivations for sex. People say, well, you know, I'm motivated by this, that, and the other, but it often drops into essentially 4 categories. And that's, the first category is really intimacy, to connect with our partner. Another motive is for pleasure. And those 2 motives, intimacy and pleasure, really mark the securely attached person and the securely attached couple. And then there's 2 other motives, and one of them is really for approval, which is what you're talking about, is that women are using sex essentially to find approval from their partner, that they're desirable, that they're sexy, that they're a worthy partner, and to, you know, to catch their partner. And then there's also a motive for basically mood regulation. It's you know, how to feel better in other states. You know, maybe it's a bad day, or I have a bad mood, or I'm stressed out, or I'm, you know, feeling sick, or, you know, something that I want to have sex that helps me. So those 4 motives. And I think one of the things that I've seen too is, you know, women using kind of this approval motive. You know, I want to be found as sexy. I want to be found as desirable. I think about the hookup culture, really. Women sort of wanting to be desirable, and men often, frequently, also in a split in terms of their motive. They may want just sexual pleasure. And so this is a perfect match in some ways. Unfortunately, I think the outcome of that match, one person wanting pleasure, the other wanting approval, the outcome is often really devastating, particularly to the woman who, you know, wanted to be found desirable, maybe hoping that it would lead to an intimate connection, and then she's really disappointed. And you're really talking about marriage or what happens in long-term
Right.
relationship though.
Well, and two, so you're saying some really, really important things. And I think one of it is, women do this. They do want to be, and men too, want to be found desirable and
Yes.
attractive. And I definitely know a lot of men who definitely want to know that their partner is interested in them. But for women, it's kind of like a double-edged sword where they want to be value. They place their value in their body, which is ironically something that we sort of teach as a society, at least in America. Definitely, and in Las Vegas, I can vouch for that. Very, very strong women put a lot of their value into their body. And so having them be wanted, feels like it's a validation of who they are as a person. But then sooner or later, they figure out that people only want them for their body. And then they get resentful or angry because, I don't want to be wanted for just my body. But also, a little bit deeper than that is just more about securing a relationship. And we are told that, and I think maybe some of these are outdated messages that have still found their way into the culture, and some bad messages that men only want sex. And so, if you can keep them interested in sex, you can get a husband or a secure relationship. I mean, not everyone wants to be married, but I think most people want a secure relationship. And so they're taught sex is the tool, the vehicle to get that secure relationship. If you keep them satisfied, then you're going to have a secure partner. And it's really that secure relationship that they're after. And they just use sex as that vehicle. And then once they've achieved it, then it's like, well, my relationship is secure. I feel secure in the relationship. My partner's helped me feel secure. So now I really don't find any desire for sex, because again, I never really got a whole lot out of it because it was to attract my partner. It was more towards my partner's pleasure. And so, yeah, it's fun, but so is having ice cream or going out for a night with the girls, and maybe it's less work and I don't have to get all gussied up and, so it's these competing messages that we get. It really makes me think of how messed up we are as a culture in America. We have so many competing messages around sex.
And I think what you're saying is that the women haven't necessarily developed what I call the erotic core, that a part of them that finds their own sexuality, finds their own pleasure, has been able to mature in a way that crafts and shapes the experience so that it's really good for them. And they maybe haven't found the way that it does create that good emotional connection, and also that it's so pleasurable, such stress relief, and feels so good to them too. So those two places of emotionally connecting and genital pleasure, maybe she hasn't quite really developed that as part of her connection strategy in relationship. It was like, I don't really see that as a big part of me. And so they don't know how to achieve that. And some of it is some work in terms of self-development about finding an eroticism inside.
Well, and two, what I see with that, and especially, again, bring back my favorite show, Sex and the City, which really, really put women's sexuality front and center. I mean, I think there were early roots of this, and you see, so in Sex and the City, if you're familiar with it, you have the Samantha character who is highly erotic, and the rest of the women are still, I sort of feel like they're all pieces. They represent like a unity, we all have like a little bit of each character inside, but all of them, stand alone on their own as well. And they all contribute to this discussion and feelings around sex. So it really put on the table women's sexuality and women desiring sex and their view of their bodies. But, what started to happen is, and this Samantha character isn't new, you had Golden Girls, you had Blanche, and I've realized any show that focuses around like 4 to 5 female characters is always going to have a Samantha character, right? And maybe we all have a little bit of Samantha in us. And I think it shows like that gave permission for women to try to reclaim their sexuality and say, okay, maybe it's okay for me to start enjoying it. But again, when we're doing it still kind of starting to compartmentalize it, where you know, we have relationship and we have sex, but we're not integrating the two. So again, I may use sex to secure a relationship. When I have the relationship, I don't need sex. Or I'm having lots of sex and not connecting it to relationship at all. And it's just kind of casual with whoever, just for the sake of genital stimulation, you know, which you can get with a vibrator too. Again, then they get into the relationship and it's like, well, I had all my fun, I had all my sex, I could take care of it on my own. And it's still not a way of expressing themselves or filling needs or drives within a couple's relationship. So it still gets compartmentalized and they're still not bringing that together with their long-term partnership. So it's like two completely separate tracks that ideally in you know, you mentioned this, like a secure connected relationship, the two should be integrated, not sort of running on parallel paths.
Well, I think you're watching Sex and the City. I think what was so revolutionary about Samantha was she was a female character who wanted genital pleasure and felt entitled to that and sought that. I mean, I didn't watch enough of the show to offer a lot of commentary, but my experience of what people told me in the few episodes I did see, which, right, I'm a sex therapist. I'm gonna watch it. That's my next binge. But you know, she wasn't even that integrated in terms of emotional intimacy with her genital pleasure. But I do think it was a revolution in terms of feeling that, you know, women can go for this and have you know, sexual pleasure. That was like a brand new message to our culture, right? For a woman.
And I think, you know, when women were using sex to secure relationship, which I still run into, I don't know, you know, maybe men bought into this too. I think there's a societal message before that men were the ones who enjoyed sex. It was their pleasure, not women. And so I forgot where I was going with this. I had the thought in my mind and the train just totally went off the track. So they're getting together and having these sexual relationships again with men that are still not very satisfied because the men are, you know, they're both engaged in it, they're both consensual, and yes, we're trying to have fun, but maybe the person that they're having the experience with is maybe more of a selfish lover who is concerned more with their pleasure and their orgasm, and not really concerning with the woman. Not, you know, I want to please or pleasure you the same way, you know, not really tuning in and really concerned about their enjoyment of the process. It's like, okay, it's hot and heavy, I got my orgasm, okay, now you go do the walk of shame kind of thing. And it's like, well, again, you know, even in these hookup, you know, the hookup culture, you know, we're not having experiences that are still, well, we're getting much out of it.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's
so
because,
and that
yeah, I mean, female pleasure is so complicated. Every woman is pretty unique, and it takes a long time for most women to reach orgasm. I mean, it takes women about 45 minutes to reach orgasm, and that's about 20 minutes of just relaxing and having a brain shift from what she's got to do that day or what she's got to do the next day into being present in the bedroom. And then it takes about 20 minutes of direct clitoral stimulation to reach orgasm. And I think a male body, which is enviable, you know, is a pretty sure thing. Most men can easily reach orgasm in many different positions, you know, at the drop of a hat. I mean, they are filled with testosterone, which is the hormone that kind of allows them to go from, you know, nothing to arouse, ready, orgasm, boom. And that's fantastic. But for women, we don't have as much testosterone. So that's the subjective physiological desire piece. And that transition is necessary. And then we need a lot of stimulation. Most women, I gotta say it, do not reach orgasm through sexual intercourse. Only about 15% of women can ever reach orgasm through sexual intercourse. So when you think about how this is all designed and put together, you know, men, yes, they can kind of split off and have genital pleasure easily, and women can't. And why often in an intimate relationship, she experiences a great deal more pleasure because he's more willing to take the time that she needs, more willing to explore and understand how she needs pleasure, what it takes. And I think in a hookup, I understand it. It's like, why would he take that kind of time, if it's really for him just about an experience? And is she going to allow her body that time in a hookup and be that directive and represent herself really well in terms of, hey, this is what it takes? I mean, I don't think many women in a situation with a brand new lover are doing that. So their experience is not going to be that great most of the time. And I know that there are women out there who do represent themselves and do have great first experiences with, in a hookup experience. So I'm not saying that never happens or can't happen, but I think in general, what I see is it is not happening.
Yeah. And it's so hard too. It really puts women in this predicament. Again, they learn to enjoy sex without orgasm because a lot of times, especially in the past when we weren't talking about sex and weren't talking about it in the bedroom, it wasn't aimed at both partners' mutual pleasure or enjoyment. It was more focused on the male partner. And so, women would have fun by not having an orgasm, just enjoying the closeness, the physical contact, being naked together. But again,
and being desired. I think being desired
right.
High for women.
Yeah, being desired. But those kinds of things can also be met non-sexually. So again, it leads to when a woman is getting these things multiple ways, where for a lot of men, we've done spectacular injustices to our men around their emotionality, which definitely affects their sexuality.
And I would say most men, couples, when they come in, most men are not saying, I just want to get off. I mean, most male clients are saying, I really want that secure experience that you're talking about, Laurie, of me feeling emotionally close and open with my partner and having pleasure. And I want her to have pleasure. So I in no way.
Go ahead.
In no way did I mean to indicate that I think men are selfish. I think
no. And I didn't get the sense that that's what you were saying. I think it's more, just again, the societal messages and really doing injustices for our men, painting them as creatures that don't care about being loved. And so we don't make it socially acceptable for men to get those needs of love and feeling wanted in other ways. So they're a lot of times their primary way of getting that is through sex, whereas women can have multiple ways of getting that doesn't involve sex. And so again, if I don't get an orgasm or a whole lot out of sex, or sex is fun, but it's just as much fun as doing something else that doesn't involve having to, again, like make sure my body is prepped and ready and like I'm all shaved and I smell pretty and just all, it can feel like a lot to do for most women when it's so much easier to do something else and get the same feeling. And so that puts them in a bad spot. It's like, how do they get more out of sex so that sex can become a priority in the relationship and not just, I just do it for him. And believe me, men don't find it satisfying when their wife is just necessarily going through the motions for them. We call it kind of the dead fish experience. No one wants to have sex with a dead fish, like a corpse just laying there. It's like that doesn't lead the man to feeling wanted or desired either. It's like, you're just a vessel that I'm using. And I find that's another thing that women do, especially if they've had trauma or again, they've learned you just use sex as a tool, is that then when they enter their sexual relationship over time, after the relationship is secure, their body is going through the emotions, but they're not really engaged to the process. So it is like a vessel that's being used. And then they also get, again, feeling resentful, like, oh, my partner only wants me because I can pleasure his body, not because he actually wants me and loves me and is attracted to me. And so they get resentful and, they're just not very connected and present to the experience, which ironically decreases the likelihood of them getting more out of it.
Right. And they haven't, I think, found a way to be very present in their body and have their body connect. I mean, we all desperately need physical connection, touch, and physical love. I mean, it is imperative that we are in physical connection in order to just stay alive, really. I mean, you know, the research says babies who are not touched actually die, and older people who are not hugged and touched. We're in the age of COVID right now, and we're seeing the deprivation that comes. And I think that for some people, their body, they're not really living in their body. You know, maybe my body was an ornament. Maybe my body was something that attracted my partner, but I don't own my body. And even, I'm not even aware of the needs that I have for touch, for hugging, for sexual release. And, you know, I think sex is a complicated experience for women. Sometimes they're going for orgasm. A lot of women, I think, they kind of need orgasm to have libido, but not every single time. I mean, sometimes they can feel a sense of deep closeness and deep intimacy, you know, just making love. And, you know, sex can be many things. It could be oral sex, it could be sexual intercourse, it could also be holding and touching and becoming aroused without completion, and that can be kind of exciting sometimes. I mean, so it doesn't have to be just one thing.
What you're saying is so important, Dr. Laurie. If I can just jump in while
please.
we have this thought is, and I think this goes back to another episode that we talked about around talking about sex, is that I find a lot of women believe that if their men don't orgasm, that they're somehow disappointed in the experience. And I find that a lot of men aren't necessarily displeased by not having an orgasm, that they also enjoy the closeness. But again, if we're not talking about it, if we're not, you know, and again, a lot of these myths that men should just be ready to go all the time. And if they're not ready to go, then that's something about me and my body, and I don't really get my partner aroused. And, you know, again, not understanding that men are also tied to their emotions. If they're super stressed, they have a hard time getting into their body. Science has proven that it's almost impossible for arousal and anxiety to live in the body simultaneously, side by side. So again, we've also furthered these bad myths, you know, that if a man can't perform, it must be us. But, you know, also not being present with our body. If we've had messages around sex that, you know, it's shameful, or, you know, it's somehow sinful because you grew up in a religious family to desire sex, that women, you know, it means you're a certain type of woman if you desire it, then not really tuning into your body, or you're kind of allowing yourself to have that pleasure or crave that pleasure. But also, if you have body shaming issues, you know, if your sense is I have to look a certain way in order to be loved or attractive to my partner, and I know I don't look that way, then I don't want to expose myself. And then I stop sharing myself with my partner. And this affects the relationship because you don't really allow yourself to be loved fully for your flaws, for the real you. You're saying, you know, I've only got to give my best parts forward. And if they're less than pristine, then I can't give them. So then I just end up not giving them. And then the relationship starts suffering from that lack of closeness because we're not fully sharing. But then we also are impacted by not feeling love for who we are, while simultaneously being reluctant to show who we really are. And I think it was a movie I saw, and I can't remember which movie it was, but you know, the guy brought up a really good point. He said, has a man ever like looked at your body and asked you to leave, like during sex? You know, and they're like, no, they're happy to be having sex. They're happy to be with you. And a lot of them have their own insecurity. They don't care if you have jiggly bits or wobbly bits. They don't care. They're not saying, oh, look at that cellulite on her thighs. Ooh, I don't think I can get her out. Like, not happening in a guy's mind, but it's happening in a woman's mind. So,
and I think,
you know,
you've said so many important things. But I think as we talk about body image, it's not just the total body. Also, women are very anxious about the appearance of their genitals, especially with pornography. You know, women's genitals have become standardized. It's the small labia, the closed labia. And, you know, women get really anxious about that. I don't look like that. And it's right. You know, only 1% of women look like that. And I mean, women look very, very different, and they're all beautiful. And I think that, like you said, men are not looking at women thinking, oh, you don't look like this. It's like men, I think, are just thrilled to look at women, a real live woman, and be able to be that intimate with her, to look at her both totally
so
naked
funny,
and to look at her genitals.
what's so funny about what you just said is, okay, so when I was working, when I was in college doing my undergrad, I was a beverage server at one of the casinos. So I'm here in Las Vegas, and I was privy to some pretty derogatory man speak, when they think no one's listening, or you walk up and they're having a conversation. I have never heard a man, and I've heard stuff you wouldn't believe, but I have never heard guys like talk about a woman's labia like, oh my God, like, I've never even heard that be a big thing, like on their list of most attractive qualities or turn-offs, or, but these things we find to pick up and obsess over. And, with it always being in your face, these images, even in very subtle ways, like when I've always been a curvy girl. I say I'm kind of juicy for a white chick, which is not very common. I'm built more like a 1950s woman. And so
you are beautiful. You are beautiful.
Oh, you're sweet. You're sweet. Thank you. But like I go on Pinterest and I find like wardrobe ideas, and it's like I want to dress like these gals, and then I put the clothes on and I don't look like them, and I realize like all these girls have the thigh gap, these things that I will never have unless I surgically modify my body, because I just wasn't built that way. And then I start feeling really bad, because it's like to me, like, these women are cute and I'm never going to look like that. And so I start hating my body. It's like, why even try, So it's just, it creeps in all these subtle ways.
And let me just say that body rejection that we go through, right, is really hard on us in bed. If we're worried about those kinds of things and we can't, at least with our lover, feel comfortable and safe, it's tough. And I think there is more body pressure for men these days than there ever has been. But I think that for women, I have young girls who say, I knew I was chubby when I was 7, or I mean, just the body pressure to look a certain way is unrelenting. So yeah, I think it's tough. And that probably is a killer for libido.
Yeah.
Women maybe feel sexual desire, but they don't feel deserving of it. And so they don't open up to it. They don't initiate, because really it's their own body judgment.
That body pressure thing that you're saying just really resonates with me. And I see it so much. It's completely ironic, because we're trying to empower women and help them feel more confident. But women, and we say, we don't want to, oppress women by making them just physical objects. Yet women more and more today are making money off of their looks, right? Or their body. We used to have a word for that, but that's no longer the only industry in which a woman can make money from her appearance. You can just take sexy selfies of yourself fully clothed and be in magazines or billboards and make tons of money.
Instagram.
Yes. And, it's like, we talk about oppression, but women are capitalizing off their looks. When they have contests out here in Las Vegas for cover models. And believe me, there's no protest. There's no women saying this is oppression. And in fact, there are like 3,000 women who show up to enter these contests. And so it feels like this constant pressure, and women are, doing a lot of surgical modifications, even when they don't need to. I had this awareness when I worked at the pool that, getting a boob job was like the new Coach bag. Like everyone just had to have it, even if they didn't really need it. So, you just notice more and more women who were just totally beautiful without enhancements, just this constant pressure and pressuring each other, and then it's encouraged and everyone wants to make a living this way, and that just adds more to it. And then it's like this whole system on its own, where then we're feeding this demand, and then, you know, creating a demand and having to constantly feed it, and not really aware of how that impacts us in the bedroom. And because it is really hard to maintain something like that. And again, all those body shaming issues. And again, going back to Sex and the City, I remember Samantha had an episode where she took pictures of herself in the nude. And one of the other characters, Charlotte, she's super conservative, totally like the Pollyanna. And she was an art, she worked in art galleries and such. And so Samantha brings the proofs of her naked photos to lunch one day, and Charlotte's looking at them with her little spectacle, and she's like, I've never seen my own vagina up that close, you know? And Samantha's like, oh, honey, you need, here, take my mirror and go in the bathroom right now. And you go in the stall and have a look, you know? And it just, you know, and I think it's so true that even myself as a young woman, getting different messages about my body, you know, men, you know, have always, you know, never given me negative feedback about being a curvier girl, but I definitely, beauty magazines, TV, other women, definitely not felt like that was a good thing. And, you know, so I was very afraid of my body, you know, and I, you know, didn't see myself as a sexual creature. And I think when you don't even see yourself as a sexual being, like, what is it like to see yourself through the erotic lens? It's harder to believe that even your partner sees you that way, or would be interested in you that way. And if you won't look at it, it's also harder to show it to your partner and let them really participate and partake of you. And so again, more holding back and just these shields against intimacy.
Right. There's a book that I recommend to women to look at. It's called Petals. And it is, it's really well done. It's artfully done it's basically up close and personal of a woman's vulva. And, you know, it's done in brown and white. So it has a little bit of distance on it. So you can kind of see texture and shape. And, you know, so many women have never seen another woman. They haven't seen themselves, which I highly recommend that, you know, you do look at yourself and be comfortable touching yourself. And, you know, certainly some women say, you know, I only wash in the shower with a washcloth. They've never even touched themselves, and let alone seen it. And many women say, oh, I'm so ugly. And it's really just, I think, a growing part of themselves. They've never seen any vulva, you know, so they don't realize that genitals have a particular look. You know, women don't realize that genitals have a particular smell. All genitals smell, and most women, unless they have, you know, an infection, they smell fine. They smell good. And I think it's really hard to come to terms with that. You know, because maybe there was an off comment when they were a child, like, oh, honey, you stink. Go take a bath, honey, or something. Or they've heard comments of, they smell fishy or something, you know. And I think most women actually don't. They don't even know how they smell. And women, their odor changes throughout their menstrual cycle. It changes throughout the day. Women don't actually need to use soap on their vulva, believe it or not. You know, water is just enough cleansing, and sometimes soap is drying and irritating. You know, there's so much.
They pick up their smell and they think that there's something wrong with them just because it doesn't smell like anything they've ever smelled before. And they're like, ooh, that's unnatural.
Or they taste themselves after their lover has gone down, and they think, oh, I don't like that taste. But actually what they're tasting is mouth bacteria combined with their genital secretions. It's not the same thing that he's tasting. And I mean, there can be a lot of just kind of sense of alienation from her genitals that a woman has. And whereas men, I think, you know, they handle their genitals every day just to go to the bathroom. They can see them, you know, they are really better integrated with their genitals. And I think that increases their pleasure. Whereas women, we're not as integrated. We have to find a way to look because we're all not that flexible anymore. And,
Right.
and I think women should smell themselves, smell their underwear. I think they should taste themselves actually,
Mhm.
just so that they
Get
can kind
comfortable with their body.
of be comfortable. This is my body. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, one of the other issues too, so let's bring this back to assuming that maybe a woman doesn't have any issues with her body, that, she feels pretty comfortable, but again, it's more about, I use sex as a tool to secure a relationship. And, maybe my partner does give me genital pleasure, but, again, it's like not that big of, like, they never learned that having an orgasm or the act of sex was a big deal. And if they want an orgasm, it's easier to just go to the drawer and get their vibrator, and that takes care of it, like that. And then they're like, then I didn't have to go through all this stuff, I didn't have to shower, I didn't have to do all this, so again, they're having a hard time really getting into sex with their partner. And so again, it's suffering in their marriage. It's not a big deal, and their partner wants to know that sex is important to them, that they get something out of it too, because that, believe it or not, actually means a lot to a man, to know that their partner enjoys sex with them, that their partner actually enjoys it and gets something out of it. But if women by and large, are somebody who has the general attitude that, sex is fun, but it's not a big deal, so it's not a big deal if I have it, so therefore I only have it for my partner, which again may not be very often because they're just trying to get by with the minimum, or their partner says it doesn't, not very satisfied because they're not engaged in the process. How do you help a woman have it become more of a priority, more of a bigger place in the relationship, rather than, it's okay, like I can do without it, like I like it, but it's not a big deal if I never do it again.
Well, first, one thing is you've told us about a woman who does have a sexual impetus that she would even pull out her vibrator. So that woman is not a low libido woman. That woman has desire, and she does have sexual feelings that she acts on. I'm really not opposed to women having orgasms on their own. I see that orgasms actually often feed libido for women. It raises their confidence in their own body, especially if they can incorporate the vibrator in the experience. And women often don't feel desire until they're about 50% of the way there up the mountain to orgasm. So they don't feel desire until they're aroused. So they really have to become willing to enter the experience basically unaroused, kind of with some sense of confidence that their body will work. And a vibrator is a sure thing. I think lovers should incorporate that, especially great for quickies, great for those times, when you're not feeling much arousal yet. I mean, I think it's important to teach your lover how to touch you so that there's flexibility and variety in lovemaking. But a lot of women, if you ask her the question, do you want to have sex? She's like, no, because she doesn't feel desire in that moment. So it's really a process of learning as a woman. I don't feel desire until after I get aroused. That's normal. That's not dysfunctional. That's being a female. Women always tell me, oh, it must be really fast for you. You're a sex therapist. You must have all the tricks. I'm like, I'm living in a female body. I have all the limitations that every other female has in order to, have the sexual experience be good. And, I think it's just that one of the things that has kept my desire high is that I trust myself. I trust my body. And, I also have worked really hard on my eroticism. So I know I can communicate what I need. I will communicate what I need. And I have a husband who's very responsive as a lover to me. So that helps. I think, sometimes women say, but I've tried telling him. And what has happened is she has decided to give up her libido because she hasn't been able to shape that experience to be something that she wants. And that is so sad for me. Women come in and will tell me all the time, I don't have any libido. But talking to her, I learned that actually she does. And she may even be more erotic and have a more creative imagination than her partner. But for whatever reason, she thinks, you know, he's the one who sets the tone. His way is the way that works. Or they judge themselves. Well, my partner can like get aroused in a heartbeat. I'm like, right, because he's male, because he has a ton load more of testosterone than you do. And you need time, and you need to assert that you need this time.
But it's also like understanding the differences, which, you know, you did a beautiful job of laying out, is that it's really hard for a man to have sex if he's not aroused because the gear does not actually work. Right. Versus a woman, her gear still works even if she's not aroused. And women can still have sex without arousal or desire, and those will come later. And I think a lot of women have this myth that you have to already be aroused or already have desire. And that desire and arousal are the same thing. You could have desire but not be aroused, and you could still enter into sex and it kicks into gear. And I think without having that awareness, it's hard for women to convince, they feel like they have to convince themselves, like, I have to have a good reason. And again, then they do it for their partner, not for themselves, not because, yeah, I think my body's going to work. I trust my body. It's going to happen. So then again, it becomes like not a really big deal, or maybe it feels like too much work to get myself into feeling aroused. And so then it's like, I'm too tired. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, you know, we'll cuddle and that'll be okay. And, you know.
Right. So, exactly.
Yeah. So you're saying that women should, you know, knowing this, you know, trusting their body, knowing that they don't have to have arousal first, and to enjoy the experience, to enter into the experience. And yeah, I think a lot of it is communication, being able to have this conversation with their partner, you know, if they're judging themselves, having a conversation, being able to share that vulnerability with their partner, like, you know, around, I judge myself, I feel uncomfortable with my body, allowing their partner to share their positive view and actually take that in and believe that they actually are beautiful and acceptable, and desired by their partner, you know, not just kind of letting it land on the surface, like intellectually, but emotionally allowing themselves to believe and feel in their bones that they are genuinely, you know, desired by their partner, really wanted. And then it's more than just wanting them for their body, you know, that they do want all of them.
Yeah, they have to they have to be able to turn off that critical voice that is so judgmental, right? Yeah. And also the critical voice that says you always have to be productive, that production in life takes precedence over pleasure. You know, you have to get so much done. And it's like, you know, when we're 80, if we haven't lived a life that has a balance of downtime and pleasure and, you know, an experience of closeness, I mean, I think we'll look back and say, you know, really, did all of that work need doing? You know, what about the other exquisite
did the laundry really have to be folded tonight, right? Is the roof going to cave in if you didn't wipe down the sink tonight, you know, or clean the toilet, right? Could you let those things slide and let yourself get into the sexual place? And I think one of the main things too is being willing to ask this question of yourself and share it with your partner, is what can we do to make sex more pleasurable for me, or, you know, something that's worth having for me. You know, if it's not something that I find worth having, then maybe that's part of the problem. And it's not that you don't have those desires or you don't have libido. It's that you don't know how to get the best out of it in that experience. And then again, without talking about it, we're not coming together and working through that together and saying, okay, let's try this, let's try that. You know, so that again, it is something she desires, or, you know, again, challenging our own barriers. What are my barriers to allowing myself enjoy this experience with my partner and have it be more than just something I'm doing for them? Because that isn't going to be a very pleasurable experience for me. It's not going to be something I'm going to let myself crave. And it's certainly not going to be super pleasurable for my partner because again, they want you to be engaged in the process, right? They notice when you close your eyes and you won't look at them or you look away, or you just kind of lay there and you don't touch them. They also don't feel fulfilled by that. And it's not necessarily always about orgasm for them. But you could actually play and have sex and it doesn't have to be about orgasm. And I think if couples could have that conversation, that might take a lot of the pressure off. That
Right.
if we can play and enjoy sex together, sex in and of itself can become associated with a more positive and fun experience. And then when we're having more sex, because in general the activity is more pleasurable and desirable, then yeah, we will end up having more orgasm as a side effect, but we're not so pressured by it that it's like, oh, I got to do all this work so that my partner can have an orgasm, or it's just too much work for them to give me an orgasm. So I'd just rather not do that.
Oh, yeah. I talk to women, they often take a month to plan a child's birthday party, a 3-year-old, and it's all decorated and there's little favors and there's special invitations, and they've been very thoughtful about who to invite. And, tons of energy goes into these birthday party plans for kids who will never remember it. And I think, you know what, if you would just divide that by 12 and put 1/12 of that energy and creativity into initiating an experience sexually that is good for you, whether it's we meet in the bath, or we have drinks together on the patio and we talk about this, that, and the other, and then there's music playing and we start dancing, or what makes it great for you. Could you just plan with 1/12 of the energy that you put into one single birthday party? That'd be the bomb. Your own desire would come up. Like, I've shaped an experience that I really think I will enjoy. Your partner would be blown away. If you initiate one time a month with a male partner, I really think he's going to be very happy, especially if it's a creative experience where, the costume, is dressed up, or you're role playing, or, it doesn't even have to be super duper exciting. It can just be,
Right.
you know what, I want sex tonight. That would blow people's minds. That would blow men's minds often. Just to say that's enough, but maybe bringing that.
I think you're saying something else that's really important is really kind of what I'm also hearing is couples, when they can communicate, they can kind of expand their idea of sex or the sexual repertoire. Again, if it doesn't always have to be orgasm driven, then that can expand the kind of sexual activity. So sex can be defined as more than just intercourse. Maybe it's we're having a shower together and we have erotic touch, but again, it's not necessarily orgasm driven, and both of you end up walking away from that still sharing that sexual intimacy and that sexual play together, and that still feels just as satisfying as the other times when you're having an orgasm, and believing that both partners can be fully satisfied by that again, satisfaction is not contingent upon having an orgasm. And so when couples expand, then it's like, maybe tonight, we role play and that's our fun thing, or tonight we just, cuddle naked, or we have sensual massage, or tonight it's only about orgasm and I just need to get an orgasm. Can we just do that? So it gives you multiple ways to express this and experience a satisfying relationship, which I think takes a lot of pressure off too.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the life of the body between two people that is erotic, not necessarily penis and vagina every single time. And I just wanted to say one last little thing about, a male erection and how women personalize it when he loses his erection, or, I mean, a lot of times as men age, even a little bit, 45, men start losing their erections. And it's not about you, baby. I mean, some of it is about their own physiology. Maybe their valves don't work as well, and so they have a little bit of backflow. They lose their erection. Erections are often driven by anxiety, and men are so hung up over how their penis is working. So hung up about that and whether or not they're staying hard. And you know what? That anxiety causes their
Right.
erections to fail. And I mean, they're often very excited about a woman, but then when their erection fails, they feel humiliated and they turn away. And women so frequently interpret that as, I'm not sexy enough for him. And it is not
Yes.
that. I would just tell you 1,000 times that if you can say, okay, it's not our night, but hey, let's cuddle, let's stay together. I really need your attention, or come to me. I mean,
Yeah.
stay with it.
If only women knew how much of an emotional experience that is for men when their erection fails.
Ah,
If they knew that men, it's not about you not being sexy, and they have often a lot of shame that comes up.
yes,
If you knew that, it would help not personalize it, and you might be able to show up for your partner in a way that heals their shame and takes away their stigma, and then their anxiety can go down and re-enter that experience, and it can still be fun and satisfying even if we didn't have an orgasm or whatever, and both people still walk away feeling loved and having their dignity and their self-esteem, and not feeling
right,
shamed by that experience.
right, exactly.
Yes, and men are emotional creatures. Their erection, their desire and arousal is impacted by their emotions too.
It is,
So
absolutely.
do not believe that they are always like they should just be able to go all the time, because that also sets both of you guys up for a lot of pressure, especially as you both age and things just don't happen as quickly as they used to, which is natural.
Yeah,
If you have that myth, then you're going to be setting yourself up emotionally for a lot of hurt and disappointment, and then again that can lead to lower desire and arousal, and lower desire just to enter into those activities or have those conversations, and then that can definitely affect your emotional connection as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Laurie, for being with us today and talking about sex. And it's just such an important topic for couples. And I'd love to continue the conversation with folks online. If you're watching this, make sure that you put comments as to maybe some of your experiences, or just what you found valuable or helpful, or how you learned to conquer these places. But I also want to encourage you to find Dr. Laurie. Now you have books, you have a podcast. Tell folks where they can find you, your website.
okay. So I'm on Foreplay Radio, which is a podcast with my co-host George Fowler, who is my colleague and a couples therapist. And we try to have just a natural conversation between a man and a woman about our experiences clinically. And we also talk about our experiences with our own partners, and try to make it really natural to talk about sex. And I have written a book called Wanting Sex Again. You can find it on Amazon. How to heal, how to rekindle desire and heal a sexless marriage. But it's more than just sexlessness. It's also about the stages of a relationship and how that impacts sex. And I blog for Psychology Today, which is called Married and Still Doing It. If you Google Laurie Watson, you're going to find all kinds of stuff that I've done out there. And I'm also a clinician. I do intensives, and you can find me at awakeningcenter.org. And I'd love to talk with you.
Excellent. And I'm going to put a link to Dr. Laurie's website on the description for this video in YouTube. So make sure that you find information about her, and also make sure you check out Foreplay Radio and hit subscribe. Make sure you also subscribe to We Heart Therapy, and you can follow me, Dr. Anabelle Bugatti, on Instagram or Facebook. And I do have a book coming out later this year. It's mostly towards therapists, but if you are a regular person, I've been assured by my lay readers that they've really loved my book. It's about using relentless empathy to shape therapeutic relationships with challenging and resistant clients. But if you've got a resistant or challenging or difficult person in your life that you're trying to shape a relationship with, or at least make those interactions more tolerable, you will get a lot out of this book. So you can find that on my website, drbugatti.com, or Amazon. So make sure you check that out. And thank you again so much, Dr. Laurie Watson, for being on our show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you so much to our viewers. Make sure that you hit subscribe, because more videos are on the way.